Today, we're cracking the code on something you hear every single day: music. Have you ever wondered why one song makes you want to get up and dance, while another one makes you feel, well, kind of thoughtful or even sad? It's not magic, I promise. There's actually a system behind it all, like a secret language. And today, we're going to learn how to speak it. And that system? It's called music theory. Now, I know what you're thinking. The word theory can sound a little boring, but trust me, it's not. Think of it more like the grammar of music. It's the set of rules that explains how all those sounds fit together to create the songs you absolutely love. It's the key to understanding that secret code of sound. So, if music is a language, where do we even start? Well, just like any language, you need an alphabet, and you need a place to write it down. Let's start right there, with the basics. Okay, first things first, the musical alphabet is probably the easiest alphabet you will ever learn. It's just 7 letters: A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. That's it. Once you get to G, the whole thing just starts over again on a higher sounding A. Each letter represents a totally unique sound, which we call a pitch. And that distance from one A to the very next A, that's called an octave. So what exactly is pitch? Well, it's really just a word for how high or how low a sound is. If you want to get scientific about it, it's all about vibrations. A super high-pitched sound comes from a sound wave that's vibrating really, really fast, while a low-pitched sound comes from a much slower vibration. Simple as that. All right, so we have our musical alphabet, but where do we actually write these notes down? They live on something called a staff. That's the set of 5 lines and 4 spaces you always see in sheet music. Where you place a note on that staff tells a musician exactly which pitch they need to play. But here's the thing. The staff is pretty useless without a crucial symbol at the very beginning called a clef. The two you'll see most often are the treble clef and the bass clef. The treble clef, that fancy-looking curly one, is for high-pitched instruments. Think violins or flutes. The bass clef, which kind of looks like an ear with 2 dots, is for the low-pitched instruments, like a tuba or a bass guitar. The clef is literally the key that unlocks the code on the page. Okay, now we know what the notes are. But music isn't just a random string of sounds, right? It has a pulse, it has a rhythm. So let's move on and see how music actually organizes time.
Every single song has a heartbeat. It's that steady, repeating pulse that makes you want to tap your foot or nod your head along. We call this the beat. It's the solid foundation that everything else in the song is built right on top of.
And that brings us to rhythm. If the beat is that steady heartbeat, then rhythm is the fun part. It's the pattern of long sounds, short sounds, and even the silences that kind of dance all over that beat. Rhythm is what makes a melody catchy and gets it stuck in your head. Now, to keep everything organized, music is divided into these little sections called measures. The time signature you see at the beginning tells us how to count them. Let's take the most common one, 4/4. It looks like a math fraction, but it's way easier. The top number, the 4, tells you that there are 4 beats in every single measure. The bottom number tells you what kind of note gets 1 beat. So a 4/4 time signature is like a little map that guides the musician all the way through the song. Okay, so we've got our notes and we've got our rhythm, but how do we actually combine them to create feelings, like happiness or sadness? Let's dive into the world of melody. The real secret to melody all comes down to something called an interval. An interval is just the distance in pitch between any 2 notes. Think of it like a leap or a step from one sound to another. Believe it or not, these little intervals are the fundamental building blocks of every melody you have ever heard. So what happens when you string a whole bunch of these intervals together in a very specific pattern? Well, you get a scale. A scale is just an organized sequence of notes, kind of like climbing up a ladder. You can think of it as the palette of colors, or notes, that a composer uses to paint their musical picture. Now, the specific pattern of intervals inside that scale is what gives it a unique mood. The most common one is the major scale. Its pattern creates a sound that we almost always hear as bright and happy and cheerful. Think about Happy Birthday. That's built on a major scale. Most of the upbeat pop songs you hear, major scales. But here's where it gets really cool. If you change that pattern of intervals just a tiny bit, you get a completely different feeling. Minor scales follow a different formula, and they tend to sound darker, more serious, or even a little mysterious. It's amazing how one small change in the code can create such a huge change in emotion. All right, we have our melody, but music often feels so much bigger and richer than just a single line of notes, doesn't it? That's because of harmony and expression. They're what come in to add all that amazing depth and feeling. A chord is what happens when you play 3 or more different notes all at the exact same time. These chords are what create harmony, which is that rich, full texture that supports the main melody. If the melody is the lead singer, harmony is the rest of the band playing right behind them, filling everything out. The most basic type of chord is something called a triad, simply because it has 3 notes, and it's actually pretty easy to build. You start with a bass note, which we call the root. Then you stack another note on top of it, specifically a third. And finally, you add a fifth to complete it. This simple structure is the foundation of almost all the harmony you hear in Western music. And we can add yet another layer of feeling: dynamics. It's just a fancy word for volume. Composers use these Italian terms to tell performers how loudly or softly to play. For example, piano means to play softly, while forte means to play loudly. A crescendo tells you to gradually get louder, which is great for building tension, while a decrescendo means to get softer, kind of like fading away. So here's the most important thing to remember. Music theory isn't just a boring set of rules about marks on a piece of paper. Not at all. It's a way to understand the living, breathing sound it actually reaches our ears. The whole point is to connect these ideas to what you're hearing. We've really just scratched the surface today, but now you have some of the basic keys to unlock the secret language of music. So, the next time you put on your favorite song, listen a little closer. Can you pick out the steady beat? Can you feel the difference between a happy major sound and a more serious minor one? The code is all around you, just waiting to be heard.